My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old. On October 17, 2025, at exactly 10:47 a.m., I stood outside the glass conference room on the 22nd floor of Harbor Summit Capitol in downtown Chicago, Illinois, holding a visitor badge that still smelled faintly of fresh plastic. Inside, my older sister smiled as if she'd built the entire world with her own hands. She pointed toward the giant presentation screen where my company's logo rotated in slow circles. "My company has always been about one thing," she said. "I built it from my apartment with nothing but grit. Every success came from sacrifice." The room applauded. Then she laughed and added, "People love saying they helped. Everyone wants credit after the hard work is done." A few investors chuckled. One of them asked if she'd ever had a co-founder. She didn't hesitate. "No. I was smart enough not to split ownership." More laughter. I didn't push the conference room door open. I didn't interrupt. I didn't tell anyone she was lying. I simply looked through the glass at the man sitting quietly at the far end of the table. He hadn't applauded. He hadn't smiled. He had been staring at me for nearly 30 seconds. His expression changed the moment our eyes met. What my sister didn't know was that the newest investor had met me 6 years earlier on the worst day of my life. He knew exactly whose company she was presenting. He also knew whose signature appeared on every original design document. She thought she was about to secure a $8.6 million investment. She had no idea the meeting was already over. She just hadn't realized it yet. Before I tell you how the newest investor recognized me before anyone else in that room did, please take a second to like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time in the comments below. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from right now. The strange thing about betrayal is that it rarely starts with one enormous lie. It begins with small corrections. Tiny revisions. Little moments where someone quietly rewrites history while everyone else is too distracted to notice. By the time people realize the truth has disappeared, the lie has become the family story. My sister, Vanessa Bennett, was 3 years older than me. Growing up in Traverse City, Michigan, everyone called her extraordinary. Teachers praised her confidence. Neighbors admired her charm. My parents admired her ability to fill every room with noise. I was quieter. I preferred fixing broken electronics in our garage while Vanessa practiced speeches in front of the hallway mirror. Our father, Richard Bennett, owned a small commercial printing company. My mother, Elaine, worked the front desk at a dental office. Neither of them were cruel every day. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, they practiced something much more confusing. Selective blindness. Whenever Vanessa crossed a line, they explained it away. Whenever I succeeded, they explained it down. I remember one afternoon on May 3, 2006. I was 14. I'd spent nearly 3 months building a scheduling program for Dad's printing shop after teaching myself basic programming from old library books and free tutorials on Google. When I showed everyone how it automatically tracked customer orders, Dad stared at the screen for almost a minute. Before he could say anything, Vanessa stepped forward. "Oh," she said casually. "That was my idea. Claire just likes typing." Dad smiled. I knew it sounded like something you'd think of. He looked directly at me. "You've always been good at following instructions." I opened my mouth. Then I closed it again. Grandpa Walter Bennett, who had been quietly drinking coffee near the kitchen window, noticed everything. After dinner, he found me sitting on the back porch. The October wind smelled like damp leaves and cold lake water. He handed me a small metal toolbox. Inside wasn't a wrench. Or a screwdriver. It was a leather notebook. Blank pages. "You write everything down," he said. I frowned. "What for?" He smiled. "Because memories argue." He tapped the notebook once. Paper doesn't. That notebook became part of my life. Every idea. Every sketch. Every meeting. Every prototype. Dates. Times. Receipts. Witnesses. At 14, I thought Grandpa was simply old-fashioned. Years later, I understood he had been preparing me for a family that treated truth like wet clay. On February 11, 2009, I won first place at the Regional High School Innovation Competition with a warehouse inventory system. The prize was only $2,500, but to me it felt enormous. The local newspaper wanted a family photo. Vanessa insisted on standing in the middle. During the interview she told the reporter, "I've always encouraged Claire creatively." The article came out 2 days later. The headline focused on me. The quote focused on her. Grandpa folded the newspaper carefully before placing it inside my notebook. "Don't fight every lie," he told me. "Some lies grow heavy enough to bury the person carrying them." At the time, I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. He was being practical. College became my escape. On August 24, 2010, I moved into a tiny dorm room at the University of Michigan with 2 suitcases, a second-hand laptop from Walmart, and $1,840 in savings from summer jobs. Vanessa stayed closer to home. She changed majors twice. Quit internships halfway through. Started businesses that lasted a few months before quietly disappearing. Family dinners always sounded the same. Vanessa just hasn't found her opportunity. Claire, stop acting like you're better than everyone. It didn't matter that I'd never said those words. Silence was often translated into arrogance. Grandpa called every Sunday at exactly 7:30 p.m. He never asked about grades first. He asked one question. "Are you writing everything down?" "Yes." "Good." Then we'd talk about life. During my junior year, I met Marcus Hale, a 41-year-old software architect who volunteered at the university's startup incubator. He wore the same faded navy jacket almost every week and carried coffee that always smelled burnt. Marcus never treated students like children. He treated us like future colleagues. One evening after my presentation, he stopped me in the hallway. "You solved the wrong problem," he said. I blinked. "I did?" "You solved a small problem beautifully." He smiled. "Now solve an expensive one." That sentence changed everything. Instead of building another classroom project, I started researching supply chain software for mid-size manufacturers. Every night after classes ended, I stayed inside the engineering lab until security reminded everyone the building was closing. On weekends, I drove nearly 2 hours to interview warehouse managers who were willing to explain where money disappeared every month. Most people complained about shipping delays. Others blamed outdated software. But every conversation circled back to the same issue. No one had built a system simple enough for businesses that couldn't afford enterprise platforms. That gap became my obsession. By March 2014, I had a working prototype. Marcus introduced me to 3 small manufacturing companies willing to test it for free. The first customer saved almost $63,500 during their first year by reducing inventory errors. The second referred 2 more clients. The third asked if they could pay before their trial ended because they didn't want to lose access. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I was building something people genuinely needed. I didn't tell my family everything. Not because I wanted to hide my success. Because experience had taught me that some people don't celebrate your progress. They measure how much of it they can claim. The first office wasn't really an office. On July 8, 2015, I signed a 12-month lease for Suite 204 at 818 Cherry Bend Road in Traverse City. The room measured barely 400 square feet. The carpet was worn flat near the window, the air conditioner rattled every 15 minutes, and the coffee maker leaked onto the counter no matter how carefully I filled it. I loved every inch of it. The first piece of furniture I bought was a used whiteboard for $85 from Facebook Marketplace. The second was a standing desk from Target that I assembled by myself after midnight. The third was Grandpa's leather notebook, placed in the top drawer where I could reach it without thinking. I called the company North Forge Systems. Not because it sounded impressive. Because forging takes heat. I understood that. The first 6 months were brutal. There were mornings when my business account held less than $2,300. I skipped paychecks. I drove the same 12-year-old Honda Accord until the driver's window refused to roll down. I answered customer support emails at 2:14 a.m., then woke up again at 6:10 a.m. for client demonstrations. Nobody saw those hours. Success always edits out the lonely parts. By the spring of 2016, North Forge had 18 paying clients across Michigan and Wisconsin. It wasn't glamorous. It was stable. That mattered more. Marcus stopped by the office one Friday carrying 2 sandwiches wrapped in brown paper. He looked around the cramped room and smiled. "You've outgrown this place. I can't afford a bigger one. You can't afford to stay here." He always had a way of making problems sound like opportunities. Around that same time, Grandpa Walter's health began failing. He was 82. His hands trembled when he poured coffee. His voice had become softer, but never uncertain. On September 19, 2016, I visited him at Munson Medical Center. Rain tapped quietly against the hospital window. He motioned for me to pull my chair closer. "Bring the notebook." I opened the worn leather cover. He pointed to the first page he had ever watched me write. "Still have them all? Every meeting? Every invoice? Every one? Every sketch?" I nodded. He leaned back against the pillow. "People can steal applause." He closed his eyes for a moment. "They can't steal timestamps." Those were the last complete sentences he ever spoke to me. He passed away 12 days later. At the funeral, Vanessa cried louder than anyone. She hugged relatives she hadn't visited in years. She stood beside the casket telling people how close they'd been. I listened without correcting her. Grandpa had already taught me that truth doesn't become stronger because you argue louder. After the service, attorney Linda Foster, age 56, handed me a small envelope. "It isn't a will," she said quietly. "He asked me to give this to you personally." Inside was a single handwritten note. "Keep building. Don't confuse recognition with ownership. The world eventually asks for proof. You'll have it." I folded the paper and placed it inside the notebook. I never showed anyone. Not even Marcus. By early 2017, North Forge employed 7 people. Daniel Ortiz, 29, handled customer implementation. Priya Shah, 33, managed product testing. Emily Rhodes, 26, coordinated client onboarding. We weren't coworkers. We were builders. Every Friday afternoon we'd order pizza, review bugs on the whiteboard, and laugh about mistakes we'd made during the week. Then Vanessa called. "I've been thinking," she said. "You need help." "I'm doing okay." "No," she laughed. "You're good at computers. You're terrible with people." I didn't answer. "I could handle business development." "We're not hiring." "You don't have to hire me." She paused. "You need family." Those words sounded generous. They weren't. 3 weeks later, my parents arrived at my office without warning. Dad walked slowly around the room. Mom smiled politely. Vanessa stood beside the whiteboard as though she'd already been working there. Dad folded his arms. She's your sister. I know. She deserves a chance. I looked toward Marcus. He had been reviewing contracts in the conference room and had heard every word through the partially open door. After my parents left, he waited until the parking lot was empty. Then he said one sentence. Never give equity because someone shares your blood. I won't. He nodded. Good. I kept that promise. Mostly. Instead of ownership, I offered Vanessa a 6-month contract with a fixed salary and no decision-making authority. She accepted immediately. The first month went surprisingly well. Clients liked her confidence. She dressed sharply. She remembered names. She could fill a room with energy that I never naturally possessed. For the first time in years, I wondered if I judged her too harshly. Then little things started happening. A client congratulated Vanessa for creating such an innovative platform. She smiled. She didn't correct him. Another customer thanked her for building features I'd personally spent 11 months designing. Again. She smiled. No correction. I noticed LinkedIn posts appearing under her profile. Proud of what I've built at North Forge. Years of hard work finally paying off. Leading software innovation for American manufacturers. The language was careful. Technically vague. Emotionally misleading. I asked her about it. One afternoon. It gives the company credibility, she said. It gives you credit. She shrugged. People assume leaders build things. I built them. She looked at me for 3 long seconds. Then she smiled. No, Claire. She leaned across my desk. They remember whoever tells the story. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it hurt. Because it explained everything. Over the next 18 months, North Forge expanded into Ohio and Indiana. Revenue crossed $4.2 million annually. We signed contracts worth $412,000 and $685,000 with 2 regional distributors. The larger the company became, the smaller I seemed inside my own story. Industry magazines requested interviews. Vanessa volunteered. Conference organizers invited founders. She accepted before asking me. Articles appeared online describing her as the visionary behind North Forge. My name disappeared into phrases like technical leadership, development team, engineering support. Every time I considered correcting the record, another product launch demanded attention. Another client needed help. Another software update required testing. Work always came first. Recognition always came last. Marcus noticed before I admitted it. On January 14, 2021, we were leaving a manufacturing conference in Detroit. Snow covered the parking garage. He unlocked his truck but didn't get inside. How many interviews has Vanessa done this year? 9. And you? None. He nodded slowly. You know what's happening. I do. So why aren't you stopping it? I looked across the frozen parking lot. I don't want another family war. Marcus sighed. Claire. He rarely used my name like that. Peace built on lies isn't peace. I didn't answer. Because I knew he was right. 3 months later, the invitation arrived. Harbor Summit Capital wanted to evaluate North Forge for a major growth investment. Potential valuation: nearly $86 million. The meeting was scheduled for October 17, 2025, at 11 a.m. in Chicago. Vanessa practically vibrated with excitement. This is it, she said. I've waited years for this room. She emphasized the word I. Not we. Not our company. Just. I. The night before the presentation, I couldn't sleep. At 11:38 p.m., I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Grandpa's notebook was still there. Beside it sat 6 external hard drives. Original source code. Early design sketches. Client contracts. Emails. Version histories. Every revision. Every patent draft. Every dated signature. Every meeting agenda. Every invoice. Nearly 11 years of evidence. I opened the notebook to the very first page. The ink had faded slightly. But Grandpa's handwriting hadn't lost its meaning. Paper doesn't argue. Neither do timestamps. If you've ever watched someone else take credit for years of your hard work while everyone applauded them, type truth in the comments. I want to know we're not alone in this. I closed the notebook carefully. Locked the drawer. Turned off the office lights. And drove toward Chicago without knowing that someone waiting in that conference room had already seen those pages years before and had never forgotten the face of the woman who wrote them. At 9:13 a.m. on October 17, 2025, the elevator doors opened onto the 22nd floor of Harbor Summit Capitol. Chicago stretched beyond the glass walls, gray beneath a layer of autumn clouds. Vanessa walked ahead of me wearing a cream-colored designer suit she'd mentioned 3 times that morning. She stopped outside the conference room and adjusted her jacket in the reflection. Without looking at me, she said, "Just stay quiet if they ask technical questions. Investors don't need to hear from programmers unless they're explaining bugs." I looked at her. "I understand." She smiled. "I knew you would." Those were the last words she spoke to me before the meeting. Inside the room sat 6 people. The managing partner, Rebecca Sloan, age 53. 2 analysts. Corporate attorney Michael Green, 48. Financial advisor Jillian Brooks, 39. And the newest investor, David Mercer, 51. The moment I saw him, I recognized him. Not from business. From a rainy Thursday in 2019. Marcus had introduced us after a manufacturing technology summit in Grand Rapids. David had been quietly exploring software companies but wasn't investing at the time. We spent almost 2 hours discussing warehouse logistics over burnt hotel coffee. Before leaving, he'd said something I'd never forgotten. Founders who understand the product are rare. I hadn't seen him since. Apparently, he remembered me. Vanessa began her presentation. She spoke confidently. Growth charts. Revenue projections. Expansion plans. She clicked through slides I had personally designed 3 nights earlier. Then she reached the story slide. "The idea came to me in late 2014, she said. "I spent months building the first version myself." David stopped writing. He looked at her. Then at me. Then back at her. She continued. "I remember coding until sunrise." The room remained quiet. She smiled, believing silence meant admiration. David finally spoke. "I'm sorry." His voice wasn't loud. "Could you repeat that?" Vanessa smiled again. "I said I built the original platform in 2014. David folded his notebook. "Interesting." Rebecca glanced toward him. "David?" He ignored the question. Instead, he looked directly at me. "Ms. Bennett." I hadn't spoken all morning. "Would you mind joining us at the table?" Vanessa laughed softly. "My sister gets nervous in meetings." David didn't smile. "I wasn't asking you." The room changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. I walked to the table and sat down. David rested both hands on the folder in front of him. I met Claire Bennett 6 years ago. Vanessa's smile tightened. We've all met lots of people. I remember this one. He opened his folder. Inside was an old conference program. My name. My photograph. My presentation title. Dated April 22, 2019. I attended her demonstration because I was considering an investment. He looked toward Rebecca. She showed me the original North Forge architecture. Then he turned back toward Vanessa. You weren't there. Vanessa answered immediately. Claire handled technical demonstrations. David nodded. She also answered every design question. She worked for me. No. He slid another document across the table. I checked before accepting this meeting. Rebecca picked it up. Original corporate registration. Founder. Claire Elizabeth Bennett. 100% ownership. Filed on July 8, 2015. The room became very still. Vanessa shifted in her chair. Legal paperwork doesn't reflect operational leadership. I remained silent. David looked at me. Claire. Yes. Do you have the development records? I do. I placed my laptop on the table. Connected the drive. Opened the archive. Thousands of dated files appeared. Every version. Every revision. Every prototype. Every commit history. Every client meeting. Every invoice. Every patent application. I opened Grandpa's notebook beside the keyboard. The worn leather looked almost out of place among polished conference tables and expensive suits. Rebecca leaned forward. What is that? My design journal. She carefully turned several pages. Every entry carried dates. Signatures. Sketches. Customer notes. Feature requests. Timestamps. Some pages even included coffee stains from nights I'd forgotten to sleep. David smiled faintly. I remember that notebook. Vanessa looked at me. For the first time all morning. She stopped smiling. This proves she kept notes. No, David said. It proves she built a company. Attorney Michael Green asked quietly, can we compare the journal with the software repository? I already have, David answered. Before today's meeting. Everyone turned toward him. He continued calmly. When Harbor Summit received the investment proposal, I recognized Claire's photograph from an old conference archive. He paused. I requested an independent forensic review. Vanessa's face lost its color. Rebecca looked up sharply. You investigated before today? I invested 3 decades learning one lesson. He closed his folder. People rarely fake products. They fake founders. No one spoke. Michael connected the forensic report to the conference display. The first slide appeared. Development history. Author identification. Repository ownership. Metadata. Every significant software milestone had been created under my credentials. Not Vanessa's. Then came internal emails. LinkedIn drafts. Conference submissions. Marketing edits. One email froze the room. Vanessa had written it herself. Remove Claire's name from the founder bio. Investors connect better with one visionary. Date. Time. Sender. Verified. Rebecca slowly lowered the printed page. She looked at Vanessa. Is this authentic? Vanessa swallowed. It was marketing. No. Rebecca's voice remained calm. It was deception. Vanessa finally turned toward me. You knew? I kept records. You planned this. I shook my head. I prepared. She laughed once. It sounded hollow. You would have had nothing without me. That was the sentence. The one she'd probably believed for years. I answered with the only words I'd spoken directly to her all day. I built North Forge. Nothing more. Nothing less. Daniel Ortiz, who had joined by video call to discuss implementation strategy, cleared his throat. I'd like the record to reflect something. Rebecca nodded. Go ahead. I've worked beside Claire for 8 years. He looked directly into the camera. I've never seen Vanessa write one line of code. Priya Shah spoke next. I supervised product testing. She didn't hesitate. Every major feature came from Claire. Emily Rhodes joined immediately afterward. When clients asked technical questions, she looked at Vanessa. You forwarded every email to Claire. One by one. Without anger. Without speeches. The truth assembled itself. Vanessa interrupted. They're loyal to her. David answered. They're loyal to facts. Rebecca stood. I think we're finished. Vanessa looked around the room. No. She reached toward the presentation remote. I haven't explained. There is nothing left to explain, Michael Green said. As counsel, I recommend ending this meeting immediately. Rebecca pressed the intercom. Security, please come to conference room A. Vanessa stared at her. You can't be serious. I am. 2 security officers arrived less than 2 minutes later. Neither touched her. One simply said, Ma'am, we'll escort you downstairs. She looked at me one last time. Waiting. Expecting me to stop them. To defend her. To rescue her like I had so many times before. I didn't. I remained seated. She walked out without another word. The conference room door closed softly behind her. Silence settled over the room. David looked at me. I'd still like to discuss an investment. Rebecca nodded. So would we. I closed Grandpa's notebook. For the first time in years. It felt light. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. Harbor Summit Capital completed its investment 3 months later. The valuation closed at $88.4 million. I remained CEO. Not because of revenge. Because the truth finally occupied the position it had earned. Vanessa resigned from every public role before the board could formally remove her. Several industry publications issued corrections after reviewing corporate records. Conference organizers quietly updated old speaker biographies. LinkedIn profiles changed. Articles were edited. None of it erased the past. It simply stopped repeating the lie. My parents called. Several times. I let the calls go to voicemail. Eventually, Mom mailed a 3-page letter. She wrote that families make mistakes. That sisters should forgive each other. That life was too short. She never wrote the words "I'm sorry." Neither did Dad. I placed the letter inside a drawer. Not beside Grandpa's notebook. Some things don't belong together. Marcus visited the new headquarters after we moved into a renovated brick building overlooking the Boardman River. He stood in my office, smiling at the floor-to-ceiling windows. You remember what I told you? I laughed. Which time? Peace built on lies isn't peace. It wasn't. He nodded once. You look peaceful now. I was. Not because everyone believed me. Because I no longer needed everyone to. On June 4, 2026, I hired 12 new engineers through a scholarship program named after Walter Bennett. Each new employee received a leather notebook on their first day. Inside the cover, embossed in small gold letters, were 7 words. Paper doesn't argue. Truth remembers everything. Sometimes young interns ask why I still keep handwritten notes when everything is backed up in the cloud. I smile. Because the notebook was never really about evidence. It was about discipline. About respecting your own work enough to preserve it. About understanding that recognition may arrive late. But truth keeps excellent records. The old notebook still sits in the top drawer of my desk. Its edges are worn now. Some pages smell faintly of coffee. Others carry fingerprints from nights when I believed no one would ever know who built North Forge. Every so often, I open to the very first page. I see Grandpa's handwriting. I remember standing outside that conference room at 10:47 a.m., watching my sister tell the world a story that wasn't hers. And I remember that I didn't shout. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg anyone to believe me. I simply opened the notebook. That was enough. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever watched someone else take credit for your hard work and wondered whether the truth would ever matter, share this video. Someone in your life might need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. I closed Grandpa's notebook, locked the drawer, looked out over the river, and finally knew that the company and my name were both mine again.